watching Telesur. This is From the South, from Caracas, Venezuela. I'm Carla Gonzalez. Let's begin. After walking 3,000 kilometers from Guatemala, a migrant's journey ended in Arizona's desert. Misael Pais tried to make his way through the Arizona desert, where he died of a heat stroke with his uncle at his side. Border Patrol agents searched for Pais after his uncle called 911, but were unable to find him before he died.
It's a great loss for the family because he was the one supporting the family. He was everything to the family, and he wanted to give my parents and my family a better life. He made a lot of sacrifice to go over there. We want over to go there, to the United States. We all alone for the American dream. We all want to go, even if I want to go.
Unemployment, poverty, these are what cause children to leave, to go abroad, and that's why he went to search a better life. Because here, you can see, there is poverty, we don't have resources, we don't have salaries.
And as more migrants continue to arrive in Tijuana, workers on the U.S. side of the border are reinforcing the existing wall. This is part of President Donald Trump's numerous measures to put a stop to the migrant caravan seeking asylum in that country. Meanwhile, another group of migrants is rushing to reach the United States border to join the first group already there. On Tuesday and Wednesday, two groups of around 700 migrants each arrived in Tijuana on the border with the U.S. The caravan left Honduras 1 month ago. And among those migrants who arrived at El Chaparral, the port of entry in Tijuana, are 78 members of the LGBTI community. They have added their names to a list that will be used by U.S. immigration officials to hear individual requests for political asylum. This small group broke off from the main caravan days ago and have reportedly faced discrimination throughout the journey.
We come in peace. We want to do things correctly. We don't want to jump over walls. We don't want to violate U.S. law. We are a group of around 78 people from the sexually diverse community. Our objective today is to request our numbers so that maybe within 2 or 3 weeks we know how long it'll take to get a number. To request political asylum beforehand, to ask government of the United States to please help us, to open their doors, because we are not people who cause trouble. We come fleeing from trouble. We come fleeing from discrimination. We come fleeing from the violence in Honduras and Central America.
We now go to Colombia, where students who were protesting for a higher education budget have been met with heavy police repression. Riot police reportedly attacked protesters with tear gas canisters and even with their fists. The students had been demonstrating throughout the day. They were later joined by indigenous groups and worker unions who are against President Iván Duque's tax reform, which seeks to tax basic goods. And as we continue in Colombia, indigenous groups from Chocó department are also protesting against high levels of violence in their war-torn region. Over 400 members of the region's indigenous communities gather in front of the Ombudsman office in Bogotá. The protesters are demanding for an audience with President Duque to address the violence affecting their community.
The city of Bogotá has received a delegation of Embera sisters and brothers for the past 3 days, totaling 450 people. They seek a direct dialogue with the president and want to explain the issues which led them to march to the city of Bogotá.
In Chile, social organizations continue to rally in Santiago to demand answers to the government's violent crackdown, resulting in the fatalities of the indigenous people. They are outraged over the militarization of the Wallmapu region, which has led to the deaths of 16 Mapuches in recent years. The latest one was Camilo Catrillanca, a young member of the Mapuche community who was killed on Wednesday at the hands of carabineros. Social leaders are calling on citizens to take action against government repression, as well as the continued appropriation of their lands.
Since 1990, we have had many Mapuche deaths across all governments. There is a systematic logic by all sectors of the right wing that sides with landowners and dictates that if a Mapuche does not bend to the will of the state, they will be killed.
We need all unions to call on a mass demonstration across the entire country. We need to fight against the repression the Mapuche face. They must be allowed to be self-governed. Their lands must be demilitarized and the jungle command must be disbanded.
And members of the special forces also shot 3 minors, including a 15-year-old boy who is in critical condition. This information was confirmed by Temucuicui authorities, who added that the minor is being held in the Coyipuyi police station. According to a community spokesperson, the young man witnessed the murder of Camilo Catrillanca, the young Mapuche leader. Coming up, we have more stories, but meanwhile, you can follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and my account at Carla G. Telesur. So give us a follow and some retweets. We'll be back. Welcome back. The Senate in Argentina has approved the 2019 budget despite heavy protests. With 45 votes in favor, 24 against, and 1 abstention, senators passed the budget that was proposed by President Mauricio Macri after 13 hours of debate. This budget is aimed at maintaining the financial agreement that the government signed with the International Monetary Fund. But people in Argentina continue to struggle with price hikes and the overall economic crisis. Many believe these austerity measures will hurt those most vulnerable.
Now, the price of vegetables has increased, fuel prices have increased, the price of transport has increased. Every day the price of something increases and people can't really bear it anymore.
I am not making any money. I am not selling anything. And people notice when you modify the prices a little. They feel like they're being ripped off. And they are very careful when it comes to buying.
Let's hear from our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Edgardo Esteban, who has more details from the budget approval.
After 13 hours of debate, the 2019 annual budget was approved in Congress. The budget includes many demands of the International Monetary Fund, as well as the payment of foreign debt. It also includes budget cuts in health, education, culture, and also massive layoffs in the public sector. Trade unions are greatly concerned about this budget and have confirmed they will continue to protest.
Edgardo Esteban from Buenos Aires. Now to Peru. The public prosecutor has opened a new investigation against former President Alan Garcia for alleged laundering of assets linked to the Brazilian company Odebrecht. Garcia has been questioned at the public prosecutor offices for the Lima Metro case, in which Odebrecht would have delivered around $24 million in bribes. The former president has been banned from leaving the country to prevent him from trying to avoid justice. Small groups of demonstrators for and against him were gathering outside the public ministry.
One of the strategies they used was, well, temp the 10% and do not deduct 10%, but let this be transformed into conferences that I'm going to give you from here at time. That's not true, because we also sign a contract and you receive receipts to make it seem absolutely legitimate, absolutely lawful.
Almost all the officials who were in his cabinet have been linked to corruption, therefore he also have been.
Now let's learn the story of 450 campesino families who are in Brazil and face eviction at any moment from the city of Campo do Meio in the state of Minas Gerais. These families say their forced eviction will benefit a coffee grower landowner. Let's learn from that.
This sugarcane producing plant ceased operating after it became bankrupt in 1996. For 20 years now, it's been occupied by dozens of campesino families. But the owners started a legal process in 2016, so they could lease the land to the agricultural corporation Jodil, owned by well-known coffee producer João Faria, who works directly with companies like Nestlé and Jacobs Douwe Egberts.
He finances this conflict and also finances the lack of resolution for the conflict through other means. He is trying to help the owners of this abandoned factory to recover the land.
A week ago, authorities decreed the eviction of 450 families living there. Sebastião and Lucien are among those who chose to resist and stay put. They grow a number of crops on that land, and in the past it was unusable. Landowner Faria would greatly benefit from their eviction since it would allow him to expand his coffee empire.
He is going to bring many tractors to harvest the coffee, and only a few people will be allowed to work here. The rest will be left unemployed. João Faria is going to create jobs. Everything he buys, everything he invests in comes from outside. So what kind of employment is he going to bring exactly?
The campesino families have invested nearly $6 million in infrastructure and crops. They are responsible for producing over 500 tons of coffee a year. For the landless workers movement, this case won't advance the government's agrarian reform. The eviction of these people from regenerated lands goes hand in hand with the country's policies.
We all understand that all of these measures began with the 2016 coup against former President Dilma Rousseff. They are part of a society that's pushing for conservative ideals that have now consolidated with our new president, Jair Bolsonaro.
Facing the onset of the agribusiness, the ineffective state, and the contradictory decisions of the legal system, these campesinos promised to stand firm and continue producing healthy products, and above all, maintain their dignity.
Andre Vieira from Brazil with a key issue for farmers in the country as well. Now to Bolivia. The President Evo Morales has been given an honorary degree by the Guatemalan University of San Carlos. Morales has received this honor as a tribute to his defense of social movements, his role as indigenous leader, and his role as following along with people in Bolivia. The president is in Guatemala attending the 26th Ibero-American Summit.
This honorary degree is not for me, but for social movement in Bolivia. He will not achieve it without my indigenous brothers in Guatemala, brothers of the social movement, the labor movement, of all the social sectors. When people join forces, nothing is impossible.
We move along to Venezuela. President Nicolás Maduro has delivered the house number 2.3 million to a family in the state of Lara. This as part of the government's housing program. Maduro has also announced the construction of new houses for families and women in need. This as part of the Venezuela's Great Housing Mission.
We are delivering 700,000 new homes this year to reach the goal of 3 million homes, and those homes will be allocated to women and families in need. In 2025, we will go from 3 million houses to 5 million houses or even more.
A group of scientists from Chile have created the first version of a photosynthetic skin. The artificial skin is made from microalgae. It uses photosynthesis to oxygenate the tissue and allow it to regenerate. This research has been developed for 7 years and could be used in the treatment of serious tissue or organ damage. A first clinical test in human beings will begin in Chile in a few weeks.
This can be used for skin tissues, but it could also be used for any organ for the treatment of tumors in radiotherapy. It can be used for organ transplants to treat pulmonary or cardiac insufficiency. There are many diseases where the problem is that the tissue or the organs isn't well oxygenized.
Now to Ecuador. The country's National Assembly recently dismissed a member of former President Rafael Correa's political party, sparking controversy. Sofia Espin was ousted from the assembly for talking to a witness on the kidnapping case that allegedly involves former President Correa. However, the Citizens' Revolution Party has accused the president of the assembly and the current administration of Lenín Moreno of political persecution of assembly members who align with the former president. And hundreds of indigenous people arrived to Ecuador's capital, Quito, to urge the National Assembly to protect their water reserves. They have marched for 11 days from the Amazonian area of Napo to deliver a proposal that would protect the region by banning extraction. Indigenous people are also calling for bilingual education, the end of criminalization of their leaders, and an agrarian reform. We'll take one last short break, but stay with us. And we're back. Political turmoil continues in Sri Lanka. The national parliament erupted into a brawl as some MPs protested over how a motion of no confidence was passed against newly appointed Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. President Maithripala Sirisena dissolved parliament last week and ordered elections, but the Supreme Court ordered a suspension of that decree. India's meteorological department has issued a warning for residents in the southern state of Tamil Nadu ahead of the cyclonic storm Gaja. Locals have been advised to stock up on water and food supplies for the next few days, as heavier rainfall is expected. Rescue forces, including Navy, Coast Guard, and disaster response forces, are on high alert.
They have asked us to remove our boats from the shore and keep them docked. They have asked us to collect drinking water for the next 3 days. We have done all that. Even then, we are a little scared. Don't know how severe and fast the winds will.
The Arab League has held a meeting in Cairo, Egypt, to discuss the current crisis in Gaza. The meeting was attended by the organization's permanent representatives. They have demanded that the Israeli military immediately halt its aggression and put an end to violence. An Egyptian-brokered ceasefire between Israel and Palestinian factions was reached on Tuesday.
The U.S. administration continued its bias towards the government of the occupation and covering up its crimes and defending it. This is what the U.S. administration does not hesitate to officially disclose by stand against all attempts to condemn aggression and occupation and its practices in violation of international legitimacy resolutions and violations of international law.
The African Union's 20th session of the Executive Council has opened in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. It has pledged to increase its commitment in pursuing institutional reform. Chairperson of the Executive Council, Musa Faki Mahama, said reform will improve the work of the African Union Commission. The Executive Council session is a preliminary step to the African Union Assembly, which runs from the 17th to the 18th of November. International and regional trade is dominating the 21st session of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Here's more on that and more stories from around the world.
The Chinese Premier Li Keqiang has called for a collective effort to maintain multilateralism and free trade at this year's Association of Southeast Asian Nations +3 leaders meeting. The meeting took place in Singapore, which is one of the 10 members of ASEAN, and in attendance were 3 of its dialogue partners, China, Japan, and the Republic of Korea. Keqiang praised the ASEAN and +3 alliance in tackling the Asian and international financial crisis and insisted it must continue to curb protectionism. The 3 partners are advancing the trilateral free trade agreement negotiations that will contribute to peace, stability, and prosperity in the region. Displaced Yemenis living in refugee camps in the northern part of the country have shared their experiences of the war. As fighting between the Saudi-led coalition and the Houthi fighters intensifies, nearly 20,000 people have been displaced recently. According to the United Nations, Yemen is the world's worst humanitarian crisis, with over 22 million people in need of some form of assistance. 13 million are at risk of dying from starvation.
We were displaced from the district of Sada, but we did not find anything. We did not even find firewood, and there is no food. Our situation is bad. We receive half a bag of flour, which is not enough for displaced families who have 7 or 8 children. How will half a bag of flour and half a can of oil be sufficient for one when we have sick children that we could not find even in a mosquito net?
The Taliban have killed 30 members of the Afghan National Army and local police force in Farah province. Reportedly, the Taliban attacked an outpost late on Wednesday, lasting 4 hours. The district police commander, Abdul Jabbar, was also killed. Security in the area has now been heightened following the attack.
That was our World News Roundup. Now, letters demanding a vote of no confidence are piling up against British Prime Minister Theresa May. Some of her own MPs are calling for her removal over the Brexit deal. The move comes after 4 members of May's government resigned early Thursday. The backlash also comes just after Cabinet had agreed to support the draft version of the agreement. But the Prime Minister remains defiant in wake of this crisis.
Yes, difficult and sometimes uncomfortable decisions have had to be made. I understand fully that there are some who are unhappy with those compromises, but this deal delivers what people voted for, and it is in the national interest. And we can only secure it if we unite behind the agreement reached in Cabinet yesterday. If we do not move forward with that agreement, nobody can know for sure the consequences that will follow. It would be to take a path of deep and grave uncertainty when the British people just want us to get on with it.
Somalia is holding its first boxing tournament after 40 years. After decades of conflict, fans hope that this competition will be a positive sign for the country's recovery. Organizers say that the increase of security and the improving of the political situation made them launch this event. Athletes like the ones we're seeing at the moment hope to see more youth participating in this sport. Morocco has inaugurated the first high-speed railway in Africa. King Mohammed VI opened the 200-kilometer railway with Emmanuel Macron from France. It runs through Morocco, connecting the cities of Tangier and Kenitra. He was joined by Macron as the high-velocity line has been built with the help of the France national railway system. And with that, we come to the end of this news brief, but there's so many other stories. You can find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. Thank you for watching Telesur, connecting the Global South. Until the next time.